She convinced me to sign over our $250, $0 family fortune so she could invest in us. Then I found out she secretly sold the house for $500, $0, and moved out with all the money. Now she's suing me for our shared assets, while I just found out she's been cheating with my best friend the entire time. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling a story like this, but life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. It's one of those stories where everything seems normal on the surface, and then suddenly all hell breaks loose. The kind of chaos I never saw coming, especially not from someone I trusted so completely, my wife. We've been married for 8 years, and honestly, I thought we had a pretty solid life. We had our routine, a nice house, good jobs, and a kid on the way. But looking back, I see the cracks now, cracks I ignored or convinced myself were that big a deal. It all started subtly. Small things, really. Acting a little more distant, secretive even. She'd hide her phone more, and sometimes I'd catch her deleting messages or changing her screen lock. I told myself she was just being cautious, maybe stressed about work or the pregnancy. She's always been a bit bitchy when she's stressed, but I figured that was normal. Still, I noticed she was more defensive when I asked about her day or who she was texting. Nothing concrete, just gut feelings that something wasn't quite right. Then came the day I noticed she was unusually evasive about the finances. We had a joint account, and I'd always been pretty involved in managing our money, especially since we'd been talking about investing for the future. However, started insisting I sign over our savings to her so she could invest in us. She spun it as a way to secure our future, to make us stronger financially. She told me she'd found this great opportunity and that I could trust her. She was convincing, too. She looked me in the eye, promised it was for us, for our family. I was hesitant, but she was so persuasive, and honestly I was tired of fighting about money. So I signed the papers. It was about $250, $0, our whole family fortune. I thought, okay, she's got a plan and I trust her. I mean, she's my wife. She's supposed to be my partner in this. She kept telling me how she'd use the money wisely, how it would grow, how she'd prove herself. I wanted to believe her. She always had a way of convincing me she knew what she was doing, even when I had doubts. But looking back, I should have known better. Something about the way she was acting, the way she avoided certain questions, it all seemed off. A few weeks after I signed everything over, I came home early from work, something I rarely did, and I saw her through the window. She was with my best friend, Jake. They were in the backyard, and from what I could see, they were laughing, holding hands. I froze. My stomach dropped. I watched as leaned in, kissed him right in front of me like she didn't even care if I saw. It was like a punch to the gut. I couldn't breathe for a second. I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe I was mistaken. Maybe it was just a friendly hug or something. But then she looked up, saw me, and her face changed. She straightened up, quickly pulled away from Jake, and started acting like she was busy watering the plants or some damn thing. I didn't confront her that night. I just backed away, feeling numb, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. I needed to find out more, to understand what was really going on. That's when I started digging into her phone, her emails, her bank accounts. And what I found, it was worse than I could have imagined. The woman I married, the woman I trusted with everything, was cheating on me with Jake. Not just a little bit, this had been going on for months, maybe longer. She was lying, sneaking around behind my back, and all the while she was telling me she loved me, that she was committed. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was drowning. I was furious, hurt, and utterly betrayed. How could she do this to me? To our family, to everything we built? But what made it even worse was that she had this way of lying, convincing herself she was right, that she was doing it for us, that she was smarter than everyone else, that she was somehow justified. Every lie she told, every excuse just made me angrier. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed a plan. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about the money, the house, everything she'd manipulated me into signing over. I was about to find out how ruthless she could be, and I was starting to realize I might have underestimated her entirely. The morning after I caught her with Jake was a blur of rage and confusion. I couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about everything I'd uncovered. The lies, the betrayal, the money she'd swindled from me. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed to be smart about it. I decided to wait until she got home from work to catch her off guard. I wanted her to face the truth, see that I knew everything. When she finally walked through the door, she was her usual bitchy self, rolling her eyes, snapping at me for no reason. I kept my cool, but inside I was boiling. I told her I needed to talk, that I knew about her affair with Jake. Her face twisted into this smug, defiant expression. She said, "Oh, really? And what exactly do you think you know, Mark? You're just paranoid. Maybe you're the one cheating, huh?" Her tone was sharp, dismissive. It was like she was trying to turn the tables, make me feel guilty. But I wasn't buying it. I pulled out the evidence, screenshots of her messages with Jake, the emails she'd sent planning their meetings, the bank statements showing the sale of the house. I laid it all out on the table. Her eyes widened for a second, then she started to lie. "That's all fake," she hissed. "You're stalking me, you're crazy." She tried to brush it off, saying I'd misunderstood, that Jake was just a friend, that I was overreacting because of the stress of the pregnancy. But I knew better. I saw the way she looked at him, the touches, the secret phone calls. There was no denying it anymore. Her reaction was classic blame-shifting, denial, accusations. She insisted I was just jealous, that I didn't trust her, that I was ruining everything. She cried, she yelled, she told me she was doing this for us, that she loved me and the baby, and that I was just being paranoid. I couldn't believe her. How could she sit there and lie so effortlessly? It was like she had no remorse, no guilt, just cold, calculated deception. I felt a surge of anger I'd never experienced before. All the pain, the betrayal, the money she'd stolen, it boiled over. I told her I was done, that I wanted her out of the house. She scoffed and said she'd see me in court, that she was entitled to half of everything. That's when I realized she was planning to squeeze me dry. She convinced herself she was the victim, that she was entitled to whatever she wanted. And I knew I had to do something about it. Over the next few days, I started to put together a plan. I hired a lawyer, and I began gathering evidence of her financial manipulations. Proof she'd secretly sold the house for double what we paid, that she'd moved out with all the money, leaving me with nothing. I also started digging into her phone and email accounts more thoroughly. I found messages from her talking to Jake about their plans, their secret meetings, even plans to run away together once she drained me dry. It all confirmed what I suspected. She was cheating, lying, and scheming behind my back. I couldn't believe how quickly my world was crumbling. Here I was, thinking I'd built a life with someone I loved, only to find out she'd been lying and cheating for months. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, legal, everything. I started to realize that she had been planning this from the start, convincing me to sign over our money, selling the house, then disappearing with it all. And now she was threatening to sue me for our shared assets, claiming I was the one who'd been unfaithful and irresponsible. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I felt like I was losing my mind, trying to keep everything together while she was out there plotting her next move. The worst part: I still loved her somehow, even after everything. But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to fight back, not just for the money but for my dignity and my future. It was clear she was a master manipulator, and I had to outsmart her if I was going to get any kind of justice. I couldn't let her ruin me, not without a fight. After I gathered enough evidence and hired a decent lawyer, I started to dig into her financial records more aggressively. I needed to understand exactly how much she'd taken, how she'd hidden it, and what her next move might be. It was like peeling an onion. Every layer revealed another lie, another deception. I found out she sold the house for $500, $0, more than double what we'd paid, and she'd moved out with every penny. She left me with the empty shell of a house, a mortgage, and a mountain of debt I hadn't even realized she'd piled on. The day she officially filed the lawsuit claiming I was the one who'd been irresponsible and unfaithful was the day I knew she was serious. She sent me the paperwork herself with a smug note attached. "You're the one who's been cheating and screwing everything up. I deserve what's due to me." I read through her claims. She was trying to take everything, claiming I'd abandoned her, that I was a bad husband who'd neglected her and the baby. She spun this story like she was the victim, but I knew better. I had the evidence to prove she'd been lying all along. That's when I started to realize that her whole plan was to drain me dry, to take everything I had left after promising she'd invest in us. She convinced me to sign over our savings. Then she sold the house, moved out, and now she was trying to steal my share of the assets. Meanwhile, I found out from some of her emails and texts that she'd been cheating with Jake the entire time, months before I even caught her. She lied about everything: her fidelity, her intentions, her love. It was like I was living in some twisted nightmare. I had this moment of clarity where I saw her for what she really was: a manipulative, selfish woman who would do anything to get what she wanted. That included lying, cheating, and even destroying me financially if she had to. I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I started preparing my own counterclaims, gathering proof of her financial fraud, her affair, her lies. I even installed a hidden camera in the living room, just in case she tried something new or if I needed to catch her in the act again. One night I confronted her again, this time with everything laid out on the table. I told her I knew about her affair, about the money she'd stolen, and that I was ready to fight her in court. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, trying to act innocent. "You're crazy, Mark," she sneered. "You're just jealous. Jake's just a friend. You're imagining things." She everything, but I had the proof. I told her I wasn't going to be played anymore, that I was done being her pawn. I warned her that if she kept this up, I'd go after her for everything: alimony, the house, the money she'd hidden. Her response? She laughed, a cold, cruel laugh. "Good luck, Mark. You're not going to get anything, and I'll see you in court. I've got the law on my side, and I've got Jake. You're just a jealous fool." That's when I knew she was dead set on destroying what was left of our life together. I felt a mix of anger and despair. She was willing to burn everything down just to get what she wanted: money, control, power. In the days that followed, I kept my head down, focusing on building my case. I also started to realize how much this whole thing was affecting me emotionally. I was angry at her, yes, but I was also hurt. I'd trusted her, loved her, and now I saw the truth, that she was capable of lying and cheating without remorse. I felt betrayed on every level. I wondered how I'd let myself be so blind for so long. But I also knew I couldn't let her win, not without a fight. I had to stand my ground, protect what was left of my life, and make sure she paid for the damage she'd done. Looking back, I see now how much I underestimated her. She's manipulative, cunning, and completely ruthless when she wants something. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most. But I also learned that I can survive this, that I can fight back, and that in the end, no amount of money or lies can replace the truth. The court date finally arrived, and I knew this was the moment everything would come out into the open. I had spent weeks preparing my case, gathering every shred of evidence I could find: bank statements, emails, texts, even recordings I secretly made just to be safe. I knew she'd come prepared too, with her lies and manipulations. Was a master at twisting things around, spinning stories that made her look like the victim in all this chaos. But I was ready. When I walked into the courtroom, I saw her sitting there, looking smug and confident, as if she had already won. Jake was sitting beside her, smirking like he was pleased with himself. I felt my stomach turn, but I kept my composure. I took my seat and waited for the judge to call the case. As the proceedings started, his lawyer began her spiel, claiming I'd been neglectful, unfaithful, and irresponsible. She painted a picture of a husband who was too distracted, too careless to be trusted with our assets. She said I'd abandoned her emotionally, that I'd failed as a husband. That's when I finally got my chance to speak. I laid out everything I knew: how she convinced me to sign over our savings, how she secretly sold the house, how she moved out with the money, and how she'd been cheating with Jake all along. I presented the evidence: the emails, the bank statements, the recorded conversations. I saw her face change as I exposed her lies, and I knew I had her cornered. She tried to deny everything at first, but the more I presented, the more her story fell apart. Her lawyer was scrambling to come up with excuses, but the dam had broken. The judge listened carefully, and I could see the wheels turning. I felt some relief, knowing I was finally getting justice. I also knew I had to be strategic, They'd try to spin it as a bitter husband lashing out, but I stayed calm, factual, and focused. The most shocking moment came when I called her out on her affair with Jake. I played the recorded messages, the texts she'd sent planning to meet him, the intimate exchanges that proved their relationship was ongoing. Her face turned red, then pale. She tried to deny it, but the evidence was irrefutable. The judge looked at her with a mixture of disappointment and suspicion. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor on most counts. She was ordered to return a significant portion of the money she'd hidden and to pay me damages for the assets she'd sold without my knowledge. The house sale, she was ordered to split the proceeds, but I'd already started the process of reclaiming my share. Was furious, screaming at her lawyer, trying to argue her way out, but the judge wasn't having it. She was also ordered to pay my legal fees, which felt like a small victory considering the mess she'd made. As I left the courtroom that day, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. The legal battle was over, but the emotional scars still burned. I knew she'd never admit to her wrongdoings, and I wasn't naive enough to think this was the end of it. But I also felt a sense of closure. I'd fought for what was rightfully mine, and I'd exposed her for who she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd lied, cheated, and stolen from me. In the days that followed, I started to rebuild. I moved out of the house, got my own place, and began the long process of healing. I cut all contact with Jake, realizing that some betrayals are so deep, you can't fix them with apologies or promises. I learned that trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But I also learned that I am stronger than I thought, that even in the face of betrayal, I can stand up and fight back. And that sometimes the only way to reclaim your life is to take it back piece by piece, no matter how painful the process might be. After the court victory, I thought I'd feel some relief, some sense that I'd finally caught up to the nightmare had dragged me into. But honestly, it was just another step in a long, painful journey. The money she stole, the house she sold, the lies she told, it all left scars I couldn't see but felt every day. I was angry, hurt, and betrayed in ways I couldn't even put into words. The worst part was knowing she had planned all this from the start, convincing me to sign over our savings, then secretly selling our home for double its value and disappearing with every penny. And all the while she was cheating on me with Jake, laughing behind my back as if I was nothing. I moved out of the house she'd abandoned into a small apartment I rented myself. It was a fresh start, but the pain lingered. I kept replaying everything in my head, her lies, her sneers, the way she manipulated everyone around her. I realized that trusting people, especially someone you love, isn't always enough. Sometimes the ones closest to you are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. It's a harsh lesson, but one I needed to learn. Over the next few months, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I got a new job, focused on my kid, and tried to forget the nightmare that was. But the hurt didn't just go away. It simmered beneath the surface, making me more cautious, more guarded. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been played for a fool, that I'd let someone manipulate me into giving her everything, my trust, my savings, my future. I started to see how she'd spun her web of lies, convincing me she was doing everything for us when all she cared about was herself. One afternoon, I got a call from a private investigator I'd hired after everything went down. Turns out, had been living with Jake in a different state, renting a fancy apartment, spending the money she'd stolen from us, and planning her next move. It was like she'd vanished into thin air, leaving nothing behind but destruction. I also learned she'd been contacting some of my relatives, trying to turn them against me, claiming I'd been unfaithful and neglectful. She was still trying to spin her lies even after everything. That's when I realized I had to cut all ties. I couldn't keep chasing her lies or defending myself against her manipulations. I had to accept that she was gone, that she'd chosen her own selfish path. I started focusing on my son, making sure he knew he was loved and supported. I also made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let her control my life anymore. I'd survived her betrayal and I'd come out stronger. But I knew I'd carry the scars for a long time. Looking back, I see how naive I was. I thought I was building a life with someone who loved me, who wanted the best. For us, instead, I was just a pawn in her game. She wanted the money, the power, the control, and she was willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get it. That realization was the hardest to accept, but it also made me stronger. I learned to trust my instincts more, to listen to that little voice that warns you when something's off. I learned that sometimes the biggest betrayals come from the people you trust the most. Now, I'm slowly putting the pieces back together. I've started dating again, cautiously. I don't trust easily anymore, and I don't think I ever will fully, but I know I'll be okay. I've survived the worst, and I've come out on the other side. And if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to know, it's this: never ignore the signs. Trust is fragile, but it can be broken in an instant. Protect yourself and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Because in the end, you're the only one who truly has your back. Looking back now, I realize how much I was by her charm, her lies, and her manipulations. I thought I knew her, trusted her, believed in us, but she was always one step ahead, playing a long game I never saw coming. The betrayal cut deep, but it also taught me a brutal lesson: never let your guard down completely. People can surprise you in the worst ways. The financial mess she left me with is still a heavy weight. Losing our home, the savings, and watching her walk away with so much, those scars don't fade overnight. But I've learned to live with them. I've learned to rebuild piece by piece. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about moving forward, about making sure I never let someone manipulate me like that again. I've become more cautious, more aware of red flags, and more determined to protect what's mine. Most importantly, I've learned that trust must be earned. It's not given freely, especially not to someone who's proven they're capable of lying and cheating. I refuse to be naive again. I want to believe in love, but I know now that I have to guard my heart fiercely. I want a relationship based on honesty, respect, and mutual trust, not manipulation and lies. This experience has changed me, no doubt, but it's also made me stronger. I've come to accept that some people are just not worth the pain they cause, and the best thing I can do is learn from them, grow past it, and never let myself be hurt like this again. I've got a future ahead of me, one that I'll build on honesty, integrity, and a clearer sense of who I am. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how much you love someone. Sometimes the biggest betrayals come from those closest to you, and it's okay to walk away. It's okay to fight for yourself. Because in the end, you're the only one who can truly protect your happiness. And I've learned that surviving betrayal isn't just about getting even. It's about reclaiming your life and finding peace again.